Falcons fans, brace yourself, because what I'm about to tell you will make your blood boil. The numbers say Atlanta should have won. The film says Atlanta dominated. But the scoreboard told a different story, and that's what hurts the most. This isn't just a loss to the Buccaneers. This feels like robbery, and I'll prove it to you right now. Breaking news hit Atlanta earlier today, and it's not the kind of headline fans expected to see. At his press conference, head coach Raheem Morris addressed the situation with star kicker Young-Ho Koo, and his words were eye-opening. Morris admitted, "We've got to go out there and bring in people to compete. That's where we're at." But in the very next breath, he tried to calm the storm, saying Koo is still the team's kicker, for now. That's a shock, because Koo has been one of the most reliable players on this roster for years. But the writing is on the wall. Competition is coming, and it could happen sooner than anyone thinks. The Falcons aren't messing around, and even a fan favorite isn't untouchable anymore. But let's shift to the real gut punch from Week 1. Atlanta's 20-17 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers didn't just sting, it felt unfair. Because once you dig into the numbers, the Falcons actually outplayed Tampa Bay in almost every meaningful category. And that's what makes this loss so painful. Here's the proof. The Falcons generated a 40.5% pressure rate on Baker Mayfield's dropbacks. Let that sink in. That's a top 5 number in the entire NFL for Week 1. Only the Steelers, Cowboys, and Commanders did better. Atlanta even ranked higher than Denver's defense, which is considered one of the best in football. That is domination. That is proof that this defense has more juice, more speed, and more depth than we've seen in years. This pass rush looked alive. And here's where it gets even crazier. When Baker Mayfield was pressured by Atlanta's front, he went 0-4-6 passing. 0 completions. Completely shut down. The defense did its job, forcing mistakes, forcing throws off target, forcing Tampa Bay to scramble for answers. Yet somehow, the Falcons still lost. And that's why fans are angry. That's why this hurts so much. Because the stats don't lie, Atlanta looked like the better team. So I've got to ask you, Falcons fans, after watching that game, do you still believe Atlanta is the best team in the NFC South? Or did Tampa Bay prove something we're not ready to admit? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Rate your confidence in this team from 1 to 10. I want to see where this fan base really stands. Stop everything. The Atlanta Falcons just dropped Week 1 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it feels 10 times worse than any normal loss. Why? Because the numbers prove the Falcons actually outplayed Tampa, and that makes this sting even deeper. Today, we're breaking it all down, from shocking press conference quotes to hidden stats that every Falcons fan needs to hear. Let's start with the headline that shook fans this morning. Head coach Raheem Morris stepped to the podium and was asked about the kicking situation, specifically Young-Ho Koo, one of the most reliable names in Atlanta. Morris didn't hold back. He flat out admitted, "We've got to go out there and bring in people to compete." But then, in the same breath, he added, "Right now, Koo is still our kicker." That one statement says everything. The Falcons aren't afraid to shake things up, and sooner rather than later, we might be looking at a full-blown kicking competition in Atlanta. For a team that's been burned by close games before, this storyline could be massive. But the kicker talk was only the appetizer. The real story is what happened on the field against Tampa Bay. On the surface, it's just a loss in Week 1. But when you dive into the numbers, the story changes. The Falcons didn't just hold their own, they actually dominated in key areas. And that's what makes this defeat so frustrating. Here's the proof. Atlanta's defense generated pressure on 40.5% of Tampa Bay's dropbacks. Let me repeat that. Almost half the time Baker Mayfield dropped back, he was feeling the heat. That was a top 5 pressure rate in the entire NFL during Week 1. Only the Steelers, Cowboys, and Commanders finished higher. Even Denver, with all its defensive stars, trailed Atlanta. That is not just good. That is elite. For a Falcons defense that's been criticized for years, this was a massive statement. It's the deepest, fastest, and most athletic pass rush Atlanta has had in a long time, and they proved it right away. But here's the painful truth. Pressure only means so much without sacks. Yes, it forced Mayfield into mistakes. At one point under pressure, he went 0-4-6 with 0 completions. But the Dirty Birds couldn't fully cash in. And in the NFL, those missed chances can flip a game. This is why the loss feels so brutal. The Falcons didn't just lose to a division rival. They outplayed them in one of the most important areas of the game. That's why fans are angry. That's why this Week 1 defeat cuts deeper. Falcons fans, I need your take. Do you see this game as a warning sign? Or do you see it as proof that Atlanta is actually better than Tampa despite the loss? Drop your confidence rating in the comments right now. From 1 to 10, how much faith do you still have in this team? The part that drives me absolutely crazy isn't just the loss, it's the play calling. The Falcons showed flashes of creativity last year, but in Week 1 against Tampa, it was stale, predictable, easy for a defense to sit on. And when you're facing a rival, you cannot afford to be that easy to figure out. Here's the problem. Too much pistol formation. Too many looks the Buccaneers saw coming a mile away. Tampa was ready for it from the first snap, and it showed. Every time Bijan Robinson lined up, it felt like the Bucs already knew exactly where the ball was going. That's not a talent issue. That's not a player issue. That's a scheme issue. Think about it. When Michael Penix Jr. is under center, you can disguise so much more. He can sell the handoff, step back into play action, or let Bijan bounce outside to the C gap. That's how you keep defenses guessing. But when you stay in the same pistol look over and over, the defense doesn't have to think. They just react. And Tampa ate it up. What makes this sting even more is the mindset from the coaching staff. You get the feeling Zach Robinson is going to chalk this loss up to a few plays here and there. A tipped ball, a dropped pass, maybe a missed block. But that's missing the bigger picture. The calls themselves were the problem. The rhythm was off, the creativity wasn't there, and the Falcons left way too much on the field. And here's where it gets real. Next week, it's Sunday Night Football against the Minnesota Vikings. Their defense? Way tougher than Tampa's. If Atlanta couldn't run through the Buccaneers, what's going to happen against Minnesota's front? So let me put it to you. Do the Falcons run for over or under 100 yards against the Vikings in Week 2? Be honest. Based on what I saw, I'm saying under. And if that happens, it's not because of Bijan, it's not because of the O-line. It's because the scheme is holding this offense back. And remember this. The Falcons had 15 total pressures against Tampa. That's elite production from the defense, which only makes it more infuriating that stale play calling is what dragged this team down. So tell me, Falcons fans, are you confident this coaching staff will adjust, or do you think we're in for another painful Sunday night? Drop your answer in the comments. Oh, for over 100 yards rushing, you 4 under. Let's see where the fan base stands. Last season, the Falcons' pass rush was middle of the pack at best, averaging just 11 pressures a game and barely scratching a 28% pressure rate. But Week 1 against Tampa Bay? Completely different story. The Falcons turned it up and pushed Baker Mayfield to his limits. Here's the eye-popping part. 3 different defenders notched 4 pressures each. That's balance. That's depth. That's a unit playing with fire. Divine Deablo was everywhere. Honestly, he might have had the best defensive performance of any Falcon on the field. James Pierce Jr. Once again, he was a constant presence in the backfield. He just has to finish those plays and turn pressures into sacks. Rook or Herrero, 4 pressures of his own, and he did it while also being a brick wall against the run. That's the kind of dual-threat defensive lineman every team dreams about. But here's the frustration. All of that pressure, and only 1 sack to show for it. 1. That's the difference between celebrating a statement win and walking out of Week 1 with an ugly loss. If Atlanta had finished just 2 more of those plays, I honestly believe we're sitting here today talking about a Falcons victory. Credit to Baker. He was more elusive than people give him credit for. Credit to the Bucs offensive line. They got the ball out quick when they had to. But still, you can't help but feel like this was the Falcons' game to take. And it wasn't just the front. The rookie defensive back showed out in a huge way. Billy Bowman looked fearless, flying around the field and making plays. Xavier Watts. I told you this kid was going to be special. Pairing him with Jesse Bates gives Atlanta a safety duo that can lock down the back end for years to come. Then in the middle of the field, it was pure muscle. The combination of Caden Ellis and Divine Deablo was everywhere, shutting down crossing routes and hammering anyone who dared test the middle. That's the type of linebacker play Atlanta has been missing. So yes, this defense is miles ahead of where it was in 2024. Raheem Morris clearly made it a priority, and you could see it in the intensity, the energy, and the execution. But that's also why this loss cuts so deep. The Falcons played good enough defense to win, and still didn't. It's the kind of performance that gives fans hope for the season, while at the same time leaving you furious that Week 1 slipped away. So here's the question for you, Falcons fans. Do you feel more encouraged by the defense's progress, or more frustrated that it didn't lead to a win? Drop your answer in the comments. Are you leaning hopeful or angry after what you saw in Week 1?